Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now you guys know that I love the PSP, and that little handheld, it continues to surprise me. So in this video, I'm gonna share 10 more hidden gems. Let's take a look. Alright, we're going to start with Split Second. This is an arcade racing game that was ported to the PSP by the developer Sumo Digital. That may sound somewhat familiar because they created the excellent Outrun games also on the PSP. This game takes place in the future. I think it's supposed to be sort of post-apocalyptic, but basically you take part in a fictional reality TV show for ratings, but the odds are definitely stacked against you. In this game, you build up something called a power meter, and you do this by drifting, drafting behind other cars, performing stunts, also overtaking cars, etc. And then what you do is you use this power play to wreck your opponents. The way you do that is that you'll see icons above opponents that are in front of you, and then you can trigger things like having a helicopter drop bombs. You can also trigger traps that are alongside the track. And then later on, depending on how far you build up that meter, you can actually take down buildings and radically change the track. However, what sucks is that they can do the same thing to you. So when you are in the lead, you can suddenly just get knocked to the side. You can barely control your car. It gets pretty crazy pretty quick. What's new to the PSP version is an extra track, as well as enhanced controls and physics, specifically for the portable version. This is a great racing game. I absolutely love it. Next up is an action RPG called Lord of Arcana. This is a game where you fight demons and monsters, and this game is going to feel right at home of fans of Monster Hunter or, say, God Eater. What's cool about this game is that it was published by Square Enix and actually features a bunch of cameos from their other games. Now, I would be honest with you and say this is not necessarily the best looking PSP game, but the combat is fun and really challenging. There's also a lot of content on this UMD. It'll actually take you 50 plus hours to see and unlock everything. For me, one of the big challenges with this game was the camera, because you don't have that second thumbstick, but it does have a lock-on feature, which definitely helps. But when you're in a group situation, when you're taking on a bunch of different enemies, it can be kind of a pain. That said, nobody really talks about this game on the PSP, so I'm so excited to highlight it as a hidden gem. Here's a game that was a total surprise to me on the PSP, and that is Ace Combat 10 Skies of Deception. And the reason why it was such a surprise is because it's so good. Now, if you're new to the Ace Combat series, what sets it apart is a semi-realistic flight sim gameplay and controls, but they also have a surprisingly deep story. Now, the story and characters are all fictional, but they do mix in real aircraft as well as ones created specifically for the game. As you play through this game, you're going to unlock new planes, medals, weapons, even paint schemes and bonus missions. Now, there are 4 difficulty levels, pretty much for every type of gamer, and you can beat the main story in about 4 hours. But if you want to take your time and unlock everything, it's going to take you about 12. So there's quite a bit to unlock in this. What I like about this game is that it is a fully featured game on the PSP. It doesn't seem like it's downgraded or simplified at all. If you like these kind of games, you should definitely check it out.
I'm willing to bet anything they got scared and ran away. I've got a reading on radar. Something's coming in at high speed. It's a missile!
Knights in the Nightmare. Now get this. This is a strategy shooter role-playing game that is part of the Department Heaven series. At first glance, this is going to look somewhat confusing for people, but basically the gameplay consists of 3 parts: setup, tactics screen, and also battle. But once you break it down, it does make a lot of sense. So for instance, setup is where you upgrade your characters, you equip weapons and armor, and you also look up special items. Tactics is where you actually prepare your battle plan. And then battle is exactly that. It's real time on a grid. Now, admittedly, this game can be fairly daunting and complex for beginners to the series, but thankfully when they brought this over from Japan to North America, they included a fairly in-depth tutorial that is highly recommended for new players. Let's take a look at FlatOut Head On. This is one of the best arcade racing games on the PSP. You know, sometimes this is compared to the Burnout series, but honestly, the FlatOut series is more physics-based and can take some time to get used to. You'll notice that as I'm playing this, the controls are somewhat floaty. That's because of those physics I'm talking about. I mean, this car has real weight to it. I mean, there's a real momentum to your car and also the way it drives, the way it turns and things like that. So it can definitely take a little bit of getting used to. I always describe the series more as like, say, Burnout mixed with a demolition derby. Now, thankfully, they packed this UMD with just a ton of content. So there's over 25 unique tracks, there's 34 cars to unlock, and let's be honest, there's some of the best graphics on the PSP. This is a really fun arcade racing game and should be in everybody's PSP collection. Tenchu Shadow Assassins. This is a fun stealth game that also came out on the Wii, but unlike the Wii, the PSP version thankfully has none of those motion controls, which arguably makes this the better version. Now, being a stealth game, you pretty much need to stick to the shadows, or you need to create your own shadows. So, for instance, a big part of this game is extinguishing candles and also lights. But occasionally you're gonna get caught. Now, what's kind of cool about this game is that you'll jump into a mini game that gives you a chance to overtake your enemy. This is the part of the game where it goes into first person mode where you're blocking and then also looking for an opening to attack. If you're successful, you'll take out your enemy that spotted you and go on your merry way, or you may have to go back to the beginning of the level. Die. This game has wonderful controls, great graphics for the PSP, and really solid gameplay. If you like your stealth games on the go, this is a must-own for the PSP. Dante's Inferno is another great hidden gem on the PSP. Here's a 3D beat 'em up that also came out on the 360 as well as the PS3, but the portable version is surprisingly solid. To start off with though, this game is basically very similar to the God of War series, but this one's based on Dante's Divine Comedy, which is an Italian story from the 1300s. In the game, you play as Dante, who wields Death's Scythe. You see me take it from him here, as well as you have a holy cross that basically just fires from his chest. You spend the game kicking ass on just waves of enemies. You also solve environmental puzzles. You do some platforming and some climbing. Listen, there's no two ways about it. This is a God of War clone, but it's a surprisingly good one and it just runs great on the PSP. A word of warning though, like God of War, this is rated mature. There is some nudity in this game, so I just want to warn people that may not be your thing. Juiced 2 Hot Import Nights. At first glance, this is a Need for Speed Underground clone, and you know, I'm gonna be honest, that's not very far from the truth, but it definitely stands on its own as a damn good arcade racing game. One of the hallmarks of the Juiced series is that you get to bet against a rival racer at the beginning of each race. I like this because it puts a little skin in the game and it really adds a little bit of extra tension to every single race. Right off the bat, you're gonna notice it has really solid controls and gameplay. It's very easy to learn and just feels great. Drifting especially can be frustrating in racing games, but for whatever reason in Juiced 2, it just is really easy to learn and master. Now, it's good to know that there are actually 2 Juice games on the PSP, but I actually like the sequel better. That's why I'm highlighting it here. I just find it to be a little bit more refined, a little bit more fun. Now I know there are a ton of racing games on the PSP, but trust me, Juice 2 is one of the best. Here we have Blade Dancer, Lineage of Light. This is a third-person RPG. Think Final Fantasy meets Golden Sun. Right off the bat, you're going to notice this is a turn-based fighting system. What's nice is that rounds don't begin until a monster's actually struck, meaning you can see your enemies before actually fighting them. I definitely prefer this over randomly generated battles. Also, enemies are color-coded to clue you into their difficulty, so you know which ones to avoid. In combat, you have a lunar bar that builds up to letting you do a special move. You either do these solo or as a group. But you need to watch out because monsters can do that too, so there's definitely a strategy to these battles. And like other RPGs, there's a crafting system that allows you to combine items to create new weapons, potions, items, things like that. There's a lot of characters to interact with, and you can choose between English or Japanese voices. I really do like the combat in this game, and definitely holds my interest, but if I'm honest, the downside to this game is that the story is pretty weak. It's pretty average. But this game is exclusive to the PSP, so if you collect or have played all the other RPGs on the handheld, well, give this one a chance. Heatseeker, another flight game on the PSP, but this time it's a little bit more arcadey than the previous Ace Combat game I talked about. First up, this game is created by a developer who has experience making these type of games. On the Xbox and I believe the PS2, they released a game called Heroes of the Pacific. But now they've moved it into the modern era, so you have jets, helicopters, things like that. So how is it different than Ace Combat? Well, not too different, but there are 30 missions here where you basically just need to blow up everything. You just blow up stuff. The cool thing is you have unlimited ammo. Also, when I compare it to Ace Combat, I do feel like this game is definitely easier to learn. Now, I'll be honest, this game is, somewhat repetitive. I mean, heaven forbid, you might actually get tired of blowing stuff up after a couple hours. And also, you can see here, it's not the best looking PSP game, but I do feel like it's more accessible than the Ace Combat series. And it's still fun, and you can find it for as little as $5. All right, well, that's 10 more hidden gems for the PSP. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I've done a couple of these videos in the past, and so I will link to those previous videos in the upper corner here. Also, I want to remind people that one of the really cool things about the PSP is that you can do video out. That's right, people forget that even though it's a handheld, you can do video out to your HD television. It's very cool, and that's actually how I captured all the footage in this video. All right, guys, love to know what you thought about this. Please let me know down in the comments below. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. It was really fun going back and doing another Hidden Gems on the PSP. It's been a couple years since I did the previous ones, yet I've continued to add games to my collection. I'd go to local retro gaming stores or expos, and I'm always blown away by discovering new games for that system. I mean, there are way more games released for that than most people realize, myself included. I keep finding them and playing and loving them, and I love to share them with you guys. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.